What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. The New York Giants have been really active in free agency, making a blockbuster trade for Darren Waller, signing Paris Campbell, extending Darius Slayton. There is a whole lot going on this offseason for the Giants, and I didn't really see all this coming. But one thing that I did expect them to do was address the defensive side of the ball and hopefully bolster their secondary. They just have not done that. And so now there's a little bit of cause for concern here, right? Julian Love leaving for the Seattle Seahawks, the New York Giants still having a big hole at CB2, and now another hole at safety. Is that the way that they're going to lean in the 2023 NFL Draft? I think that we're at a point now where the Giants have bolstered their offense quite enough to where they might have to just go ahead and address cornerback in the draft, because so far, no veteran cornerbacks signed by the Giants. We thought that would be one of their top positions to prioritize going into the offseason, and it just looks like they might be saving that one for the draft because, again, nobody signed just yet in the secondary. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of those top draft prospects at the cornerback position. Some of these guys that the Giants might want to target with a 25th overall pick in the first round right now. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all that. But before we do, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode and subscribe to the channel if you're new. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today? And what are your thoughts on a few of these top cornerbacks in the first round of the draft?
I'm doing great, man. And yes, this is definitely a scenario where the Giants have the affordability to go with a BPA, and cornerback could certainly be in the cards. I know a lot of people want a receiver, and I do too. And if they do go in that route, I am more than happy to get a guy like Zay Flowers or Quentin Johnston or Jordan Addison or JSN, even Jalen Hyatt's up there. This is a really good scenario for the Giants to be in. They're able to go with a best player available kind of strategy after having a pretty solid free agency up to this point, really good contracts, incentive laden, so they're not going to be substantially big. They're not going to hold them down in the future. They can move on and open up cash flow in the future if they need to. But the cornerback market in specifically in this upcoming draft class is extraordinarily deep. There is a ridiculous amount of cornerback talent. Now, the free agency cornerback class is also very deep and a lot of talent there as well if the Giants wanted to spend a pretty penny. But if they want to draft somebody, the first round, they can get a legitimate starter at the back end of the first round at 25 this year, and that's going to be really exciting for the Giants, because ultimately a lot of years you see cornerbacks go very early because there's only maybe 1 to 2 or 3 maximum of starting level corners. This year, there's a good argument to make. There's 8 or 9 starting level corners that you can get in the first 2 rounds of the draft. So that would you could argue that maybe waiting until the second round is possible in this scenario, but cornerbacks tend to go pretty early, so I think teams will be jumping on top of them. And for the case of the Giants, they don't seem to be extending Adoree Jackson. According to Dan Duggan of The Athletic, Adoree Jackson, they're going to kind of ride out the rest of his contract. So they need to be starting to prepare for life after Adoree Jackson now, and they could also use a CB2 to pair with him. So a lot of people are high on Cordell Flott. I like Cordell Flott as well, but he's nowhere near being a starting level cornerback right now. You know, I see him as a nice depth piece right now. He can supplement injuries. He can supplement fatigue. Maybe you throw him into the slot a little bit. Maybe he goes in and plays him outside corner if they're running, plenty of wide receivers. If you have a team that has a strength there and they're throwing out three receivers, you need more cornerbacks. He can definitely go out there and make some decent plays happen. He played pretty well against, I want to say it was Devonta Smith against the Eagles late in the season. But I do like Cordell Flott. He's a little bit young. He's a little bit undersized, but he has time to grow and develop and add a little bit more size to his frame. But in the meantime, going out and getting a legitimate cornerback prospect who can start alongside Adoree Jackson right away and eventually take over as that CB1 and give Cordell Flott the extra year or two to develop into a CB2 potentially, I think that's a good scenario. That's a good strategy to kind of work with. And ultimately, the Giants didn't make a ton of defensive acquisitions. They had a couple of depth pieces on the defensive line. Obviously, got Bobby Okereke. So right now, a lot of the assets the Giants did invest in were in offense. You look at all the receivers. You look at bringing back Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley. Wink Martindale's got to get some love, right? So you look at the cornerback position and say, okay, this is a place where we can definitely make an upgrade. We can give him a really strong man coverage corner, and there's a lot of them in this draft class. So we're going to break down a few for you guys that I think could fit this Giants team pretty well, Anthony. But I'll let you kind of take it away with one that you've kind of been discussing in Deonte Banks.
Yeah, Deonte Banks is a player that I really like. Listen, he's just an athletic freak. When you look at his intangible traits, they'll blow you away. He had a huge 2023 NFL scouting combine. Maryland's cornerback, who's 6'2", 205 pounds. So right there, you know that he fits in with the mold that Wink Martindale is looking for. He likes his big, tall, physical, and strong corners, and Deonte Banks is that. But to make matters even better for Deonte Banks, make you really interested in this prospect, 6'2", 205 with 4.35 40-yard dash speed. He blew everyone away at the 2023 the scouting combine. I mean, having that blend of size and speed at the cornerback position is invaluable. That is very rare to find a guy like that. A lot of fans, like Joey Porter out of Penn State, and so do I. I think he's also a great player, but he's a 6'2", 198 player, so he's 7 pounds lighter, and he's 4.46 speed. So when you look at Deonte Banks and his physical traits and his athleticism, I mean, he's arguably the most athletic cornerback in this draft class. He also posted a 42-inch vertical at the combine and an 11'4" broad jump. So he instantly skyrocketed into the first round draft projections. He was originally a day 2 guy, but now redshirt junior out of Maryland, he is looking like a first round prospect, and he was mocked twice in recent mock drafts to the Giants with the 25th overall pick. So it's becoming a hot name here. Deonte Banks, just mainly based on his athleticism and just knowing that when you have a good defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale, he can do a lot with a player who has just unlimited athleticism and unlimited potential like Deonte Banks. And I think that's why I'm really intrigued by him, knowing that the New York Giants could be going cornerback at 25. There's a lot of guys we're going to dive into. Again, Joey Porter Jr. being another one out of Penn State. I like him a lot. He's very physical. But Deonte Banks, one of those players who just rose up the boards at the combine. And when you see the way that he plays and the way that he fits into a scheme like the New York Giants, he's aggressive. He likes to jump passes. He could be kind of that Marcus Peters role. If the Giants don't go out there and sign Marcus Peters to a low-cost contract, he's a free agent right now, they could go with Deonte Banks, who's 6'2", 205, very similar size and frame as Marcus Peters, has a lot of speed like Marcus Peters did back in his prime, and also has the aggression to sit on the boundary in a cover 3 zone defense or in a man coverage defense and play some good press man coverage, which is exactly what Wink Martindale is looking to do. So Deonte Banks, again, a combine riser, looks like a perfect fit in the New York Giants defensive scheme, and I love all the athleticism that he has. I think his ceiling is unlimited. Alex, what are your thoughts on the Maryland cornerback?
Look, Deonte Banks is pretty solid. I mean, you said it. He's physically imposing. He's a ridiculous tackler, and that's what I really like about him. You put him on the outside, and you need if you have a cornerback on an island, and if the Giants are going to be running a lot of man coverage last year, towards the second half of the year, they were running a lot of cover 3. They were not committing to their man coverage scheme a lot because they didn't trust Nick McLeod and Zion Gilbert and Fabian Moreau and Cordell Flott, who is still really is a rookie obviously last year. So you go with a guy like this who can survive on an island by himself, and you're not going to be worried about him on the run, right? When you have an offense that plays a lot of man coverage and you need those cornerbacks to be able to tackle and shed blocks on the outside, especially if you're running like to the outside zone or on sweeps, like you need cornerbacks that can be physical and aggressive. Deonte Banks is physical, aggressive, and he missed 1 tackle in 36 attempts last year. So if you're asking someone to go and stop the run, he's a guy that can step up and make plays in the running game too. And that's really exciting. You really want corners. You look at Jalen Ramsey. That was like what made him, aside from being a tremendous corner, he was so good against the run too. Physical, could step up and make plays there. That's what I really like about him. That's a concern of mine with Cordell Flott. A lot of people have been mentioning, pushing Cordell Flott into the slot. That's a really, really risky play because he's not a good tackler. He's too small, and every time he tries to tackle, he gets hurt because he's a kind of just like a really limber guy right now, and I think he needs to add a little bit more muscle mass, and that was always part of the strategy of his development. But I don't think that he can survive in the slot because he's not physical enough. He doesn't have the frame to survive in the run game there. That's my biggest concern. But this guy, you put him on the outside in Deonte Banks, he can really survive out there on an island and do some stuff in the running game. That's why I'm favoring Aaron Robinson being pushed back into the slot for what it's worth. Out of UCF, traditionally, he was actually a slot corner. He was a nickel corner. They put him on the outside because he kind of had the nice physical traits to do so as a 3rd-round pick. And I see him actually pushing back inside. He's a good physical cornerback that can stop the run, and he can take those hits, and he can deliver those hits. And I think that that's probably where he actually fits the best for this Giants team. I think the Giants will end up cutting Darnay Holmes and saving the $2.7 million eventually, or they'll pull a Darius Slayton. They'll kind of restructure his contract and say, hey, like we're not going to keep you at $2.7 million, but we'll keep you at 1.2 and we'll save the $1.4 million additionally. I could see them going in that direction as well. But Deonte Banks, certainly really exciting. You mentioned Marcus Peters as an interesting comp. I have another guy, and a lot of people are mentioning him as well for the Giants at 25, and that's Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. 6 foot, 180 pounds, so decent height, but he has a ridiculous wingspan. He has 14 interceptions and 17 pass breakups over three seasons for the Bulldogs. 14 interceptions, guys. That's what Marcus Peters did for the Baltimore Ravens and Wink Martindale all those years. So long. You're talking about 3 to 5 interceptions a year on average. This is what Emmanuel Forbes does for you on the outside. He's aggressive. He can take it to the crib. He's wingspan. Guy's like a freaking pterodactyl. And he had an 89.3 coverage grade this past season. So, if I'm looking at Emmanuel Forbes as an option, a lot of people like him. He's a really, really good, route jumper. That's really what his game is all about. Very aggressive. His eyes, if you play him off ball, the Giants don't really play a lot of press. They play a lot of off-ball man. So I kind of like him in that scheme because he can play off. He can watch the quarterback's eyes. He can jump those routes, be aggressive, and you have a safety behind you in Xavier McKinney that has sideline-to-sideline speed. So if he gets beat, you have insurance over the top, which I really like. So I do think that Emmanuel Forbes, with his speed, his aggressiveness, and his eyes and vision as an off-ball man cover corner rather, he would be a nice fit for this team as well at 25. What do you think about him?
So for me, with Emmanuel Forbes, I like everything that you described. I like that he's ball hawk. He has a knack for getting his hands on the ball, making interceptions, big plays. But when he got to the 2023 NFL Scouting Combine, yes, he was originally listed at 180 pounds. That's what people thought he was going to be playing at and getting weighed in at the 2023 Combine. However, he actually weighed in at 166 pounds. He's one of the lightest players in the history of the NFL Scouting Combine. Yep, he came in at 6 foot, 166 pounds with 8.5-inch hands, 32 1/4 inch arms, and a 79-inch wingspan. So yes, I love the wingspan. That does make him a fit for a press scheme because having those long arms helps you jam the receivers at the line of scrimmage. But weighing in at just 166 pounds, here's a fun fact about that. The lightest anyone has ever weighed at the Combine was J.J. Nelson at 156 pounds. Here's a really crazy stat to digest. The average weight of an NFL cornerback this past season was 193.5 pounds. So you're talking about a guy being over 25 pounds underweight for his position, for the average of his position. I don't know about that. I think that is a cause for concern, and honestly could be a cause for disaster. A guy like Emmanuel Forbes, yes, he might have all of the, athletic testing. He's super fast. He's got the ability to get his hands on the ball, and he has good instincts, right? But he's so skinny, and the Giants already are trying to deal with a skinny cornerback in Cordell Flott, trying to see if they can get some mass on his frame, see if they can mold him into a solid cornerback. But when you're talking about Emmanuel Forbes being that light, I mean, you can't put him in the slot because he's not going to be able to make that kind of an impact and run defense at the next level. He has really small hands, so you kind of get concerned about him being on the outside and being in press coverage, but he does have good arm length, which is good. He's got the huge wingspan, which helps him in press, but overall, this is a player who had a lot of production in college, but his physical traits, I just can't see them perfectly translate into the NFL, and I have a lot of concern about his ability to do so. Again, I really like the player, but I just think he's a risky player. Very boom or bust, because he has all of the traits that you want on the field, but when you're looking at his size, his weight, and everything like that, there is just no one who's ever had success at that size, at that height combination, and so if he does have that, he could be a really special player. This is the boom that I'm talking about. He could be one-of-a-kind player that finds success despite weighing 166 freaking pounds. But there's also the very strong likelihood that at 166 pounds, he gets bullied by some of the wide receivers in the NFC East, like an A.J. Brown, who's literally going to say, "Get off of me, you're too small." And so that's my concern here. If Emmanuel Forbes can get to the right team, find a coaching staff that bulks him up, and he ends up, rising his weight up to about 185 pounds, that's great. But you really think he's going to add 19 pounds between now and the start of the regular season while also keeping his speed? He ran a 4.35, which is great. That's one of the fastest combine times out of any of the cornerbacks. He's very fast, but you have to expect him to be when he weighs 166 pounds at the combine. So you have to imagine if he puts on the 20 pounds that he desperately needs just to get to a normal playing weight, he's probably not going to have that same speed. And that could also lead to injuries. A really small cornerback trying to add weight but maintain his speed, we see that happen a lot of times, and players end up getting injured because of it, because it's way too much work to be doing in one offseason. So Emmanuel Forbes is a project, and right now I don't think that the New York Giants should be in the market for a project at cornerback. I think that there are more polished and more pro-ready cornerback prospects on the draft board that should be available at 25, and even if they aren't available at 25, I think there are some players that would actually be worth trading up for if you're the New York Giants. And the number one name that I do want to throw out there for being a trade-up candidate at the cornerback position, it's Joey Porter Jr. He is so pro-ready out of Penn State. I brought him up earlier. I got to bring him up again because this is a prospect that everybody loves. He could maybe even go in the top 10, but his draft projection right now is somewhere between 10 and 15. So if you're the Giants and he's sitting there at 15 overall and you can move up 10 spots, maybe give up a third-round pick, I think you do it because you're getting a day one impact starter who's very young, very physical, perfect fit. He's man coverage, loves to play in cover 3. Like, this is exactly the mold for a Wink Martindale cornerback is Joey Porter Jr. I love his physicality. He's got 34-inch arms, so that makes him perfect for the press coverage. And he ran a 4.46 40-yard dash time, which is a solid time when you're 6'2", 198 pounds. Again, 22 years old, young guy out of Penn State. They have insane athletes being produced out of Penn State every year, and they're all panning out in the NFL. Like, there's something to be said about that. Seeing Michael Parsons step into the league and instantly become an all-pro player, there's something to be said about the success of Penn State players and how easily their game is translating to the NFL. So, Joey Porter Jr. coming out of Penn State off of a really successful final season and having some very solid testing numbers at the combine. This is definitely the guy that if the Giants are considering trading up and not trying to give up the whole farm to trade up into the top 10 and get a guy in the top 10 like a Devin Witherspoon, if you want to move up into the top 15 and take a guy like Joey Porter Jr., I think that it makes a lot of sense. But Alex, what are your thoughts on Joey Porter Jr., standout cornerback out of Penn State?
I mean, look, Joey Porter Jr. is one of the more proven guys in this class, right? He has multiple years of excellent performance, and, he's erased guys like Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, he has gone up against some of the best at 6'2", 194 pounds. He's a first-round pick. I've seen him dropping past 25, though. Like, I've seen him everywhere. I've seen him in the top 10. I've seen him in the top 20. I've seen him beyond 20. I don't really know where he's going to land at this point because it seems like people have reservations, but it also seems like people love him. Like, I don't really know where his stock ends up. But if the Giants were sitting there pretty at 25 and Joey Porter Jr. is there and, you need a CB2 and he's experienced and he's a really good press coverage corner, he's aggressive, he's got good frame, you take the shot, man. Like, that's a good player right there. He's a player that starts for you immediately, and he's experienced. Like you said, he's young and experienced, and he's has those physical traits. So I do like him a lot. But my dream, if the Giants could get a guy that fit Wink Martindale's system to perfection, I would go with Devin Witherspoon. I don't know if he's going to drop that far. Probably not. But if he did, this guy is an absolute monster. His top reasons to buy in, according to the Draft Network, experience and success in a man coverage scheme, tremendous ball skills, tone-setting personality. He's a good tackler, and he has a special teams resume. So you look at a player that can do it all and contribute on special teams, Giants love that type of value. You know what I mean? And one of the negatives is that he may get pigeonholed into a nickel role, but to me, like there is a concern that he could end up in a nickel spot. But to me, I kind of see that as a bonus because that means he can play nickel as well. If the Giants need someone to follow a receiver, like a guy like Tyreek Hill or like someone that travels into the slot, maybe a CeeDee Lamb. You have a guy that can do that too. Like he's not just an outside boundary corner. He can move into the nickel role. He can play in the slot. He can play on the outside on the X. Like, he can do it all for you. And that's a massive bonus. I see that as a versatility benefit instead of it being like, oh, he's going to end up playing nickel. I don't think so. I think that it actually helps his value. Obviously 6 foot, 180 pounds, a little bit small, but I'll tell you this right now, he plays a lot bigger than that. The guy can freaking lay out people. He has a hit in this last year. He comes off the edge, man, and there was like a bubble screen to a running back. He hits his running back so hard, he almost does a backflip. I swear to God, if you go and check it out, it's insane. Like, the running back literally almost does a full backflip. He gets hit so hard. He can pack a punch, and he's a very good tackler in terms of fundamentals and technique. You love that, as I mentioned before, with Deonte Banks, really good run stopper. So you have that value there with Devin Witherspoon, and he's coming off a scheme where he played a heavy man coverage against really good opponents with Illinois. So, I really do think that this is a player that would fit perfectly coming out of the Big Ten with the Giants, and he fits just has a nose for the football as well. You mentioned Marcus Peters as the comp. You were kind of talking about him with Emmanuel Forbes and Deonte Banks. Devin Witherspoon is also capable of being that ball hawk. He's aggressive, and he bleeds confidence. That's something I love about Sauce Gardner, by the way, with the Jets. He is just a confident guy, and everybody's smart with it. You know what I mean? He talks trash, but he backs it up. You know what I mean? It's not like he talks trash and gets burned. He talks trash and backs it up. That's what Devin Witherspoon does. He's confident. He attacks players. He's not going to sit down and back away. He's going to go 100%, and he's going to back it up with good performances. So that's why I really like him. If he was there at 25, which I don't think he will be, that would be like my dream for the Giants. I would love if they walked into Devin Witherspoon. If he was there at like 20 and we traded up a couple of picks for him, I would love that. He's got a really nice, healthy mix of so many things he's capable of doing. Like I mentioned before, the special teams value. We tried that with Adoree Jackson last year and kind of bit us in the butt. But as a gunner, something that is low probability for injury, I'd be more than happy to, run him out there and do some good stuff with him. But what are your thoughts on Devin Witherspoon? I don't know if you've done much research into him, but he's definitely a player, mainly because he's probably going to go a little bit earlier, but he's someone that really fits the bill for the Giants. I think he would be a tremendous pick if he was there for us.
Yeah, if he was there for us, tremendous pick, but I think you're right. He's going to go earlier. The New York Giants would likely have to trade maybe into the top 10 to get Devin Witherspoon. There's some mock drafts that have him going in the top 10. There's some boards that have him as number 1 on the draft board in terms of cornerbacks. But then there's also some random mock drafts that have him going, at 30, 25. It's really strange seeing the way that all of these cornerbacks are shaping out in these mock drafts because a lot of them are getting picked early in some mocks. They're getting picked really late in some other mocks. It's very strange. It's almost like there's not really consensus on the cornerback prospects right now. And it seems like post the NFL Combine, a lot of different teams are probably talking to a lot of different analysts. The scouts are having conversations, and they're probably struggling to rank a lot of these guys just because there is so much talent at the top of this cornerback class. And it almost makes me think that if the New York Giants are going into the 2023 NFL Draft thinking best player available, that player is probably going to be a corner. There is so much talent at that position this year. And Devin Witherspoon, yes, being one of the top talents, I mean, you love his physicality, you love his strength, his man coverage ability. That's all the stuff that makes you scream like this can be Wink Martindale's Marlon Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey for the Baltimore Ravens, one of the best corners in the NFL, an absolute ball hawk, just like Marcus Peters was, but Marlon Humphrey being the even better player in the Wink Martindale defensive scheme. I mean, that could be Devin Witherspoon. He's got a similar athletic profile. He's got a similar physicality to his game. And yes, that clip where he blows up that Illinois player, and not Illinois player, but because he plays for Illinois, obviously, but he blows up that player. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a running back get hit harder than that clip. That was actually utterly insane. It was an Indiana player. He literally did a backflip. You are right, Alex. And I love to see that. And that is something that when Wink Martindale turns on the film, we know how Wink Martindale loves to, just find the most aggressive players and throw them into his defensive scheme. When he turns on the film and he sees Devin Witherspoon make that hit, he's going to say, can we draft him right now? I want this guy. I want this guy who's going to crack some skulls for me in my defense. So Devin Witherspoon, again, a very important player for the Giants defense is that cornerback 2 position, and having the aggression and having the ability to make plays against the run and on those short bubble screens just like that makes him a really good fit. But let's talk about one more guy as well, Alex, who I think you're talking about a player that the Giants would need to trade up for most likely. Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. Now, the main thing about Christian Gonzalez is versatility. Here's what PFF had to say about him. On tape, Gonzalez is the most scheme and alignment versatile corner in the class. Press, off man, zone, outside, inside. Gonzalez can do it all. So Christian Gonzalez coming from Oregon. He's also super athletic. He tested really well at the combine. He's 6'2", 201 pounds. He's probably going in the top 10. So yes, you're talking about the Giants trading up for him. But if for whatever reason a player like this slides, this is the guy who has no bust ability, right? Because he's not going to bust because he has the ability to play all over your defense. He can play on the outside, he can play on the inside, he can play zone, he can play man, and I just think that a player like this, he has such a high floor. So if the Giants see themselves in a position to get a guy like Christian Gonzalez, Alex, what are your thoughts on him? He also performs well in run defense. He had a really solid tackling grade from PFF, but again, his testing numbers, 4.38 second 40-yard dash at 6'1" at the combine with a 41.5-inch vertical and an 11-foot plus broad jump. This guy's an athletic freak who has the ability to play all over your defense, and he only had 3 missed tackles with 45 missed tackles and a 4.9% missed tackle rate. So again, very physical player who can make an impact in run defense, but a very versatile cornerback who I think can make a huge impact in the Giants defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, end of the day, this is probably the CB1. He's probably the guy that's off the board first, but by the graces of the football gods, if he fell to us, he is the easiest selection I'd ever have. Like, he's not falling to 25. Let's be real. You're trading up for a guy like this. He is 6'2", 201 pounds. He's a prototypical cornerback size. He is an all-around zone coverage master. He can play man. He can play press. He's a ridiculously great tackler. He's the guy's got like laser vision. He's like a freaking superhuman. He's capable. I mean, they were saying he was a multi-sport athlete. He could have played any sport he wanted to, chose football. Looks like a good decision now. But I'll tell you this right now. He's just a monster. Like, this is a player that you draft to be your CB1 immediately. If you don't have a cornerback one, he's a guy that can step in and be that person right off the bat. So if you're the Giants and he's somehow, for some reason, he stubs his toe and he drops to 20, you're trading up for a guy like this, because at the end of the day, this is an all-around monster. He is going to be, if he reaches his potential, the best cornerback in this draft class, and it's a very deep draft class. So if Christian Gonzalez was if he was sitting within striking distance and we didn't have to give up too much to get him, I would pull the trigger so freaking fast, it wouldn't even be a hesitation. But with that being said, I think there's way more of a likelihood that Devin Witherspoon ends up within that range for us, like within striking range. But at the same time, Deonte Banks might be the guy. Like, I don't think the Giants necessarily want to move up. I think they want to sit pretty, because this draft class is very deep at a couple positions, right? You have a lot of good receivers, you have a lot of good corners, you have some good defensive linemen, you have some good players. The offensive lineman class kind of weak this year, but I'd say like cornerbacks and receivers, you probably just sit pretty and just take the best one on your board. Like, you can't really go wrong with the best receiver or best cornerback. One of those guys is going to be there for you, whether it is Jordan Addison or Quentin Johnston or Jalen Hyatt, or if it's Deonte Banks or Emmanuel Forbes. Like, one of those guys will be there for sure. It's just a matter of like, is the cornerback or the receiver higher on their board? And I think you just go with everyone's higher on the board. At the end of the day, I don't think you draft for need there. You just go which ones you graded higher, and you're going to get a really great player, one that at least is going to make an impact immediately. So I think, like, if Christian Gonzalez was there, of course, it would be an easy selection in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so exciting about what Joe Schoen did in free agency this offseason. He set the Giants up to where they're in a position now where they can go best player available. They don't have to force a corner. They don't have to force a wide receiver, especially now considering they added so much talent on the offensive side of the ball. So if you're the Giants, you might even want to consider trading down from 25. Like, we're talking about being aggressive, trading up for a guy like Devin Witherspoon, maybe moving up for a guy like Christian Gonzalez. But really, when you look at where the Giants are at in a position, they could go from 25, trade down into the second round, and maybe get 2 second-round picks, and you could probably knock out offensive line and cornerback in one go right there, or corner and receiver, because there's a lot of talent in that second round at both of those positions, wide receiver and cornerback. So, and honestly, if you take a look at the draft history, sometimes those round 2 wide receivers pan out more frequently than the round 1 guys. There's been many instances of that. I mean, DK Metcalf was at the end of round 2 or round 3. He was a late pick, and A.J. Brown was also a second-round pick, so keep that in mind. Plus, Justin Jefferson wasn't the first receiver off the board. He was a late pick in the first round, somewhere around 25. I think he was a 23rd overall pick. So the Giants don't have to trade up for any of these players. Yes, it would be exciting if they did, and there is a lot of top talent in this draft class that's going to entice them and make them want to do it. But I think that the Giants, just being so smart this offseason, really allocating a bunch of the resources to the draft and trying to load up on capital, there's a good chance that they actually trade down and target a few of these other cornerbacks who might be available in round 2, like a Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami, a Cam Smith out of South Carolina, and I think Emmanuel Forbes, we mentioned him, but he might fall into the second round as well just because of that 166-pound frame. So he might be a target if the Giants want to trade down and get someone in the middle round of round 2. So it's going to be really exciting to see what the Giants do, but the opportunities are all there. There are definitely a ton of different unique opportunities to think of when you're looking at where the Giants are at this 25th overall pick. And of course, we will be keeping you updated on everything New York Giants right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And leave a like if you did enjoy, and comment your thoughts on all the top cornerbacks down below. We'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.